I'd sink into one foot. That compresses the spring and allows the other side to expand. And then that expanding side grabs the ground and pulls me towards that foot. Let's just breathe. Remember, as I bring the hands in and breathe in, I'm trying to pull myself into the legs. Trying to get the action starting in the legs. There's a sense that it starts in the root, almost like something under the ground is trying to suck you down into it. And then riding horse again. But really try and feel the sacrum and the hips holding the sacrum. The sacrum is sort of curved like this. You can think of it sort of sneaking under and containing the dantian. They very much belong together. And the Ming Men is just being pushed back so that the lumbar spine is pretty much flat. The sacrum is the part of our body that belongs to both the upper body and the lower body. I think the lower body is the legs and the hips, and the upper body is the spine, the arms and the head. And the sacrum slots into the hips, so it's sort of the top of the lower body and the bottom of the upper body. So it's important to have the mind as close to the active area as possible, so as close to the legs as possible. We just want to get used to the part of our mind that properly and naturally resides in the legs, and especially the root, the feet, and here where I use the legs to hold on to my upper body. And you find if your mind is in the legs, then you can't think to yourself. Thinking to yourself with words is a sort of a civilized luxury, really, that we indulge in, because we don't have to have our energy immediately available all the time, which people that live in more primitive and simple societies would. Okay, now let's just reach forwards and pull. I want to feel it happening in the whole side of the body. So I'm reaching forwards with the arm, but I want to bring my attention to the leg. So the leg is straightening, the same as the arm is straightening, and then they both pull. And what I want is to try and get the foot pulling just a fractionally before the hand, so that it is all starting in the leg. So that my foot pulls, which draws me back like that, and that kicks in the hand. Toes and the fingers extend and straighten, and then the toes grip at the ground and the fingers grip at the rope. Again, just trying to get the mind here. So lower than we're used to, lower than the Ming Men. So you can think of the hips either side of the sacrum or the sacrum itself. And then just feel the craniosacral system. So the skull with the spine descending and the sacrum and the little tailbone at the very bottom. So we know what it looks like because we've seen drawings. The vertebra, especially at the bottom, are really quite thick and heavy. What I want is to make sure that I'm not holding the sacrum with my legs too tightly. So all the time, when I say relax the sacrum, what I really mean is just release the hip bones away from the sacrum a little bit. So it feels like it's cradled in a space that's very much cushioned with air, with space. Because when you grip the sacrum too much, it's that really that squeezes the activity into the head and feeds the thinking. So to relax the mind, you have to relax the hips and the sacrum, this whole area, the problem area. And what you find is that we hold on to the tension here, not because of trauma or fear or anything like that, but because we just love thinking to ourselves. And when this gets some sort of quiet, it's like, what's there for the mind to do? And then, of course, the mind just is with energy. So when the mind stops thinking, stops doing this unnatural language-based stream of consciousness, then you become aware of the energy that's flowing and manifesting within the body and within your environment. And then the mind can be with that, which is a much more natural way to be. And now let's try the two circles. So it's really pretty much the same thing as reaching forwards, what we've just done. But what I do, I take it a bit further. So instead of just reaching forward with the arm and yanking something towards me, I turn more and get the hand coming back towards me before I turn back. So once I've established the return, then I turn back with my waist. We've just made the previous exercise more circular. So here, instead of imagining that we're reaching forwards to pull something towards us, I'm imagining that I'm reaching behind the back of someone and just teasing them in, coaxing them in, giving them a little, the tiniest of pushes. And then I have to turn back. Otherwise, I'd have to walk around a circle. Feel the arm expanding into its curvature. So it's expanding into a straightness, obviously, but I want to feel that as it starts curving, it's still growing, it's still lengthening. And it's only really here when I turn back that it sort of shrinks. The same way that the arm is trying to reach behind the back of someone, there's a sense that your leg is trying to reach the other side of that bit of ground that I'm going to pull towards me. So I'm not so much pulling the ground as getting behind it and pushing it from behind. So here the leg is straightening, then it has to continue expanding, but into a curve. So I have to start sending the knee out to break the leg. And then get the hand that comes in to drop down and brush the knee. The other hand, as it comes in, it's as though it's trying to get into this hole in the groin, the other side. And then it just becomes the figure of 8 around the hips or around the feet. Feeling that the hand that brushes the knee is getting slightly below the knee. And that will help draw you into the sacrum. The only way you can really have your knees out like this and be sunk and sinking is if you relax your grip on the sacrum. And that means you'll get your mind out of the head and into your sacrum. And now let's try a bit more of the breathings. Remember, breathing in here, trying to get my sacrum sucking down into my legs. Good. And now turning. Really feeling the action of the legs. This leg is straightening and then it bends. This leg straightens and then it bends. But when I turn, everything is moving. It's as though the room is moving around me. We want it to be so controlled and even, the movement, that we can feel as though this is the room that's moving rather than me. And we want to bring the attention to the leg that's going to fill. So now it's as empty as it ever is. I'm really in this leg. So this foot starts pulling at the ground. And I reach the front. And then I want to feel how it changes from pulling into pushing, to push this hip round. In order to go from the pull to the push, something has to start happening, has to start twisting inside the leg. So I pull, and then here it's still pulling, but it's also pushing to get me around to this side. This is what we want to feel. So I pull with the leg, and then it starts pushing. But it's still pulling because it's still trying to bring me in this direction. Pull and now it's squeezing. And then this leg can join in. So there is a sense that you actually start pushing immediately after the pulling before the other leg kicks in with its pushing. With that spiral tightening that comes up the spine that we're just trying to activate and feel. So I pull and now it's twisting. So there's a lot of action inside the torso. And it's this that naturally passes the energy to the other side of the body. So the cross energy. Pull and Okay. And getting the sacrum, relaxing down the legs. It's the buttocks really melting down the backs of the legs. And then just firm up the mind. So what we're trying to do is establish that helical or spiral musculature, the feeling that the muscles are wrapped around the bones in spirals. And when I am really determined and together and ready for action, then that spiral is taut. So it gives a feeling that it could fire at any minute and I could move very quickly, but it also gives the feeling that I'm squeezing myself. This is what they talk about, the packing the energy into the bones. So when you use the muscles correctly, they're not simply moving this lever, they're tightening around the bone and squeezing the bone. So the bones are getting a massage, which packs the energy into the marrow, apparently, and the marrow gets denser. And it's all from the turning, really, but it's more like twisting, like you're turning one part against another. So now let's just do the first warm-up exercise, but with this exactly the same action we've just been doing. So this leg is straightening and then it pulls, and then it starts straightening. This one straightens and pulls. So I want to feel it coming from the legs, but it's this very sort of dynamic, sort of almost like you're sort of doing this with your whole body and the ground. Really, I'm working to strengthen the musculature that's responsible for the turning. Because if you think, in Tai Chi, you've got to get a fist whipping out from just a flick in the hips. So this needs to be strong so it can generate power. You can still go slowly when you practice, but it's a slowness that is because you have two opposing forces almost balanced, rather than the slowness that indicates a lack of energy. So it's this thing of pulling with the foot and pushing with it at the same time, or turning left and turning right at the same time. And it requires the body to be loose. When it's in relaxed state, it can hang really loose and the joints are free and open. So the body feels tense, but it's only because it's possessed by energy. So something is flowing through my body. Ugh. And then if you catch it, you just have to be careful you don't overdo it, because it really gets the spirit and it can leave you feeling quite exhausted. And then let's go into the second one. We want to feel and appreciate that, it feels like it's coming from here. This is sort of turning both directions and it's getting this sort of twisty contortion into my body, but really it's coming from the ground, from the action of my feet on the ground. That's where it starts. So it's from the root. It's a very active root. Something goes into the ground and that sucks something up from the ground and into me. And it's that coming up that expresses in this movement. And you just have to get into the sacrum, because if you're not, and there's a break around the min meng, then the energy coming from the legs just won't really get into the upper body. And you'll have to sort of fake it by just moving your arms independently of your legs. So I have to sink down, to get down into the legs. And then when the hand comes up, it's from the ground. It's not because I brought it up. The arms are just whipped into place by the flow up from the ground, and the pathway is really convoluted, and it talks, it's twisting all the time, like the bullet that rifles down the barrel of the gun. And my mind is just trying to get as close to the source as possible, to the ground, to the root. And then let's go into the third one, which we don't normally do. Is this one, you've got, the arms are even freer here, so you can feel it. Again, we don't want the activity in the arms simply coming from the turning. To really get into the legs, if you can, I sink down here, and that gets energy ricocheting up and flinging into this arm. Okay. Now just feel riding horse. So it still has that stillness and stability of riding horse, but it feels like each joint has got air in it. There's almost a sense that each bone is floating in the space. Feel this craniosacral system almost also floating in the hold that the hips have for it. So it needs to be this loose and this potentially active for energy to really come into the system properly. And now just going backwards and forwards, but with the figure of eight. And again, just use the hand to brush the knee. You know, it happens in the form, in those brush knee and push postures, but it happens all the time in the form. And I find it just so useful in just getting me down into the legs. The problem with the mind is it can always tell itself it's doing what it's meant to be, what the body's meant to be doing, but it's not really. So I'm getting lower and lower each time I go around a foot. The sacrum is getting more and more relaxed. I'm smiling into my sacrum. And then the other foot forwards. Whenever we hold the ball in Tai Chi, the hand that comes on top of the ball has first brushed its knee. The visualizing mind. It's all important. Allow the body to lag behind your visualization. You visualize, and then the energy will take that pathway, and then that drags the body along with it. So your visualization is really just the energy. It needs to be in the mind, at least to begin with. But obviously it's not a thinking mind. It's a mind that sees. It's an imaginative mind. Good. And then let's try a little bit of this one. And you're getting it coming from the legs. I straighten the leg and then I pull, and that starts the return. You want to feel the straightening leg as really just emptying. It's straightening because it's emptying, it's letting everything out. We have to be careful that we don't push too much, because when I push the ground in order to move my body, I'm also pushing my hip into my sacrum. And so squashing that joint that I'm trying to open up. So as I sink into this back foot, this leg is straightening because it's just flushing its energy out. That is also helping move me in this direction, but it's not as though I'm really pushing something in a hard way. So there's a little grip of tension here, and then it's all really just letting the energy out slowly. This joint actually gets more open because it feels like I'm just wanting to let go of the leg and let it fall away. The more empty the leg gets, the more I can just let it go completely. But then, of course, the more I have to hold on with the other leg to stop myself from falling. And then the other side. Pull and straighten. Bend the leg and straighten the other one. Breathing a little bit. Breathing in, sucking myself down into my legs. Breathing out, pushing myself back up. And now, stepping with the figure of 8. I loop around one foot, lets me step with the other one. My visualization is much larger than it needs to be. So here my figure of 8 in my mind is reaching all around the room. John said once, when you do your Tai Chi, your energy should reach all the corners of the room. Feel the energy, feel the flow, feel the ethereal, the airy of air and angels. It's very much of the soul rather than of the body. So it's a useful and very interesting idea, that of the soul, part of you that's energetic rather than physical, and the part of you the part of you that's just in a different dimension, a different realm. And we need to connect to that. And that's really what internal work is all about, including prayer. You're just connecting to the godly part of yourself, a part of yourself that's of energy. I love that Oscar Wilde quote. To be really modern, it's very important not to have a soul. And it's, we've lost all concept of the soul. We want to wake that up, but we wake that up through the awareness of energy. So to start with, I need to visualize the energy because I can't feel it to begin with, because my mind is just too active. It's too locked in the world of things and ideas. So you need to practice for quite a long time before this starts quietening down, before you stop being resentful and you can start just opening up. And then there's a sense that this energy that's flowing has got a real intelligence. And so your awareness is that really. It's the intelligence of your energy. Nothing to do with the intelligence in the mind, in the head. And there's a real richness. It's touching everything. The energy is getting into everything. It's like a mischievous child. And then the other foot. And you'll find you would have a figure eight going simply in the hips or around the feet to start with. But as the energy starts to wake up and become more active, it just becomes the figure of eight exercise with a figure of eight in each arm. So it sort of doubles up. It's like, you know, musicians suddenly going double speed. The rhythm is the same. They're just going twice as fast. Similar feeling here. It's just become twice as active. And then let's just bring it into this exercise. And it's very similar. It's just got smaller. Well, this exercise is really the complement to riding horse. This is loosening everything up and bringing air and space into all of the joints. And riding horse tends to pack everything into a stable, solid structure. So riding horse really needs this to make it interesting. And then let's just bring it into riding horse. But it's still sort of there. It's like we're sort of trying to keep it going. And it just gives it richness, gives it life and detail. Trying to get down into my legs. That is so difficult. And it's exhausting. And then bring it up. You know, they say about ward off. When the arm is in ward off, it's bent, but it's wanting to straighten. Now here, it's sort of straight, but wanting to bend. It's like there's an inner core that's straightening and all the flesh and the outside is trying to melt down. And that's all the way through to the very top.